Now we are back in Disney World, and to prove it, here's the Mickey Mouse Review.
Welcome to the Diamond Horseshoe, come on and dance with me. Be a part of Goofy's Country Dancing Jamboree.
We're going to bring ghosts from all over the world, but we haven't got the ghosts in there yet. We're out collecting the ghosts.
Hurry up, everybody. You won't want to miss this.
WDW Radio, your information station.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to the WDW Radio Show, your Walt Disney World information station. I am your host, Lou Mongello, and this is show number 574. And I'm here once again not only to help you have the best vacation experience when you go to the Disney parks, but I also want to bring you a little bit of Disney magic wherever you are with the podcast, live broadcasts on Facebook every Wednesday night, videos, blogs, special events, audio tours, and more. Whether it's your first time visiting or you've been to the parks hundreds of times, if you're planning a Disney vacation or love the history, details, secrets, and stories, there's something in the show for you, because each week I'm going to take you with me from the parks to the screens and everything in between. And if you're a new listener, welcome. Thank you. Please go back and check out some or all the past episodes for interviews, top 10s, reviews, and more. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes and find everything over at WDWRadio.com. So this week, we're going to take a close, really personal look at Star Wars, what was, what is, and what will be, as the Rise of Skywalker, the Rise of the Resistance, the Mandalorian, Galaxy's Edge, and the Galactic Starcruiser are all part of an epic legacy. And we're going to explore and discuss them both individually as well as collectively, how they fit together, and what the future holds on the screens and in the Disney parks. I'll then have the answer to our last Walt Disney World trivia question of the week, and I'll pose a new challenge for your chance to win a Disney prize package. Then stay tuned to the end of the show. I'll have more information about our next WDW Radio Meet of the Month during a marathon weekend, your voicemails, and more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of the WDW Radio Show. A long time ago, about 42 years by my calculations, in a galaxy far, far away, and for me, that galaxy was Middlesex Mall in South Plainfield, New Jersey, everything changed forever. Because Star Wars was not just a movie, it was an event, it was a paradigm shift, not just for science fiction, but for movies and pop culture. And it didn't just have a ripple effect. It was more like a tsunami effect on the genre, the medium, and what would end up being generations of people around the world. And I still remember the first time I saw Star Wars like it was yesterday, and the profound effect that it had on me and my family, my relationships with my dad and others, and yes, even the trajectory of what would become my passion and eventually my career. But all good things, right? The ninth movie in the Star Wars saga brought with it a sense of closure, finality, and a wide, very wide spectrum of emotions, both positive and otherwise, from people. Twitter, I'm talking to you. But it also represents something else, and that's a new beginning. Not just a new chapter, but I think really a new book. And the stories that will and are being told will not just be confined to the silver screen, but the small ones, the ones in the palm of our hand, the ones in our living room, and the adventures that we can not only live out, but create on our own. The Rise of Skywalker, The Rise of the Resistance, The Mandalorian, Galaxy's Edge, the Galactic Starcruiser, they're all part of this epic legacy, a story that's our story. And this week, we're going to look at them both individually as well as collectively, how they fit together, and what the future holds, both on the screens and in the parks. And joining me are two men who are very worthy of the Jedi robes that I know that they wear. I sort of envision you guys walking around the house wearing them pretty much all day long, not to make it creepy, but I want to welcome back to the show Dan Zaire from coffeewithkenobi.com. You may remember.
Yes. Well, hello. That's I really like that you kept my seat nice and warm for me. That's very, very kind of you. And yes, the Jedi robes get taken to the dry cleaners once a week, but then of course we get them back, get all the Wookiee fur out, and we are in good shape.
Now you're just making it weird and creepy. But Dan's been on the show. We talked, back in, I think, 2015 about Star Wars weekends, then Galaxy's Edge, Star Wars Celebration, I think recap, and lots of other stuff. And also coming back to the show from from Forcecast.net is Ryan Donahoe.
Lou, Dan, good to be here. Very excited. I don't know about you, but I've never been more pumped up for Star Wars. So just 2 episodes later, Lou, and I'm back, and I can go all night. So let's do this. Yeah,
there's a lot to cover. And Ryan was there we did the live review of Rise of the Resistance. We were also together at Star Wars Celebration. And Ryan also put together the Next Stop Endor, the story of Star Tour's audio documentary, which was I was honored to be a part of, and really, really a great look at the attraction. But I know, excuse me, your fandom, like mine, goes far back. I mean, really more so for you guys. Your fandom is both a mile wide. I talk for a living, I promise. A mile wide and a mile deep. But I really want to sort of start simply, because there is a lot to sort of go over and digest. And I think we even said this before we went live. And it really is a wonderful, amazing time to be a Star Wars fan. Dare I say the best time in history, because there's so much to consume, so much to do, so many mediums. And the experience is no longer passive. And in fact, one of the reasons why I wanted to do it this way and talk about is, to a certain degree, everything old is new again. So sort of just touch on, Dan and then Ryan, this current state of Star Wars fandom.
You brought up something at the beginning of the show that I think taps into why Star Wars is so beloved in our culture. I mean, how many movies do you know that people will go out opening weekend and take pictures in front of the poster, right? Or will recall the first time that they saw a Star Wars film in a movie theater or on their screens in the privacy of their homes. Star Wars is about the only thing that does that. I saw it at the Dew Twin Drive-In in Metairie, Louisiana, for the very first time in the summer of 1978. We tried going a bunch of times in 1977. It was always sold out. So when we finally got the chance to do it, I never forgot it, obviously. I've been talking about it probably every day since then, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. And now 2019 was pretty much, like Ryan said, this was like the year of Star Wars. You had Celebration, you had a brand new Star Wars film, you had Galaxy's Edge on both coasts, and then you had Rise of the Resistance adding to Galaxy's Edge in Walt Disney World at Hollywood Studios. And then The Mandalorian and Disney Plus comes over, and The Mandalorian becomes the top television show on the planet for anything. It's just, it's absolutely remarkable. And then you throw in Baby Yoda and look out. I mean, it is an absolutely glorious time to be a Star Wars fan. And then we know in less than a month and a half, we have the return of the Clone Wars on Disney Plus. It's fantastic.
You all are right, and I did not see it in 1977 or even 87. 97, I was there, but we'll talk about that later. But what's weird is, for Lou and for Dan and for everyone listening, I'm sure mainly probably Disney, but for Dan and I, we're the Star Wars guys that everybody knows, our family, friends, coworkers. We all know that we're like really into Star Wars. But what I've noticed in 2019, and especially after The Mandalorian came out, is that Star Wars has gone mainstream in a way that I don't know it ever has since 1977, because not everybody is believe it or not, Empire Strikes Back is not everyone's favorite movie, or Return of the Jedi. Some people still don't like the teddy bears that now blink. But so there hasn't really been consensus since 1977 in Star Wars fandom. Trust me, Dan and I know. But for the first time ever, I was at work the other day and somebody was like, "Are you a Star Wars fan?" And I was like, "You have no idea." Well, they were like, "So if I go see this new movie, is that where Baby Yoda is?" They're asking, they've never seen a Star Wars movie in their life, but they want to go see because everyone's talking about Baby Yoda. Everyone knows we just moved to Orlando about a year and a half ago, so we're locals, and everybody's asking me, do we have to get out to the Star Wars land? Do we have to get to the Star Wars land? My grandma's calling me for Christmas, and she's like, "Do you like, your dad says you like the Star Wars. Where's the baby at? I want to watch the baby." I have never seen so much mainstream Star Wars love. Yeah. And what's funny is the last saga film, Skywalker saga film, is out, but yet everyone's posting pictures from hangars of Star Destroyers, and there's Baby Yoda smiling at me every time I open up the internet. So that's how crazy of it is, a time it is for Star Wars, that the last film comes out, and yet I'm getting it from all angles, from all different, everyone's got something else they want to talk about in Star Wars.
Well, my wife actually said to me the other day, she goes, "Now don't freak out, but I think I want to watch The Mandalorian." And I said, "What?" So that's when I knew that pretty much this is like end time sign or something like that. It's pretty great.
Yeah, all of the planets in the Outer Rim have aligned with, again, it's hitting fandom on the nostalgic level, right? Those of us who saw it in 77, it's hitting fandom for those people who've never seen anything Star Wars that maybe are coming in because of the child, right? We're not supposed to call him Baby Yoda because I guess technically he's not. Or the theme park fans that are experiencing like this land and all of a sudden are sort of getting wrapped into this literal and figurative Star Wars world. So all these sort of different entrance points are bringing fans together of all different ages and demographics and levels of love for the product and the characters, and they're really all sort of converging all at once, and we're getting this, to keep it, this sort of supernova of fandom, and it's amazing. And I think you're right. We've never seen anything like this before. Yes, in 99, when they announced episode 1, there was this initial Star Wars is back, right? We got excited again that for the first time there was something new coming. But even with all of the animated series and Clone Wars and Rebels, and there's been little dribs and drabs of content, nothing has amounted to where we are right now. And this, again, that's why I sort of wanted to talk about these things as the convergence of the big screen, the small screen, the real life experiences, and then what is going on. So maybe that's what we should do, is sort of, let's start with, the Rise of Skywalker, which I think for a lot of people is either the thing that they've consumed most recently or has sort of brought them back into Star Wars fandom. And I want to be very clear, and I think we maybe have even talked about this on some of the shows we've done in the past together. I've been very honest about my personal fandom, and that I was so excited when episode 1 was announced, and I bought all the toys, and I went to Toys R Us, and I went to the movie theater, and I was like, oh my God. And I came out, I was like, okay, I need to see it again. And then I saw it again and again. I was like, well, Duel of the Fates is a really good song, and I really like Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I felt, unfortunately, like I was sad that my fandom was a steady and then somewhat rapid decline as more stuff came out. I was not a huge Clone Wars fan. That might change in the near future. I didn't love the prequels at all. I haven't even really fallen in love with the recent films. I've tried to go back and watch them again, and it just didn't hit me and tug on my emotional heartstrings, and then everything changed. Literally everything changed. And I know that sounds like, a lot of hyperbole, but it's true. I saw Rise of Skywalker, and I remember as soon as it was over and as the credits were rolling, I grabbed my phone and I had to just brain dump and record my thoughts because I couldn't believe how I felt when that film was over, because I laughed and I cried more than once. And I said, as I was looking back at my notes, I said, when people see this movie, they'll understand what I mean, that this is for you. Because I think it's so hard. I think it's nearly impossible to succinctly close out a saga that has spanned 40 years and multiple generations. And I think that's what Rise of Skywalker did. In this nerd's opinion, it accomplished that. And it satisfied Star Wars fans of every age, every trilogy, and every generation. I saw it with my son, and we both had the exact same word, which was we were satisfied. And that's not to minimize our reaction. Like, we were just so comfortable and happy and satisfied with the result. And I did. And again, from a personal perspective, I cried at the movie, and I'm going to try not to do it again now, but I cried at the end of the movie because there were moments that I would look over as things were happening. I'd look at my son's face, and he looked up at me with that, "Oh my God, wow, that's amazing." And I thought back to being 9 years old at Middlesex Mall Cinema, and the first time my dad and I saw Star Wars, and the Star Destroyer came across the top of the screen for the first time, and I looked up at him like, "Oh my God, like, what are we watching?" That's the way he looked at me.
It's a beautiful thing. I got to see it quite a few times the first week. Obviously, I went to the premiere, and that was magical because I got to share that with my wife. And that's the thing I talked about earlier in the show, is that what Star Wars does is it's atmospheric and it's very cultural. I mean, movies are a cultural experience in and of themselves, but these moments that you're talking about, Lou, these memories that we have, who we saw these movies with, particular scenes and moments, they resonate with us. I took my son, who was 6, his name is Mason. This was the first Star Wars movie he saw in a theater. So when it said a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and Star Wars blasted and John Williams' music started to blare, he grabbed his chest and he looked at me like, oh, like his breath was taken away. Later he told me he was scared because it just jumped out right away. But it's pure unadulterated magic, because it does bring us back to those moments. You mentioned 1999. I subscribed to the USA Today for 6 months because every day they had a Star Wars nugget in their lifestyle section. So I kept all of them and made a scrapbook. I went to the midnight thing at Toys R Us and bought all the toys. I was not crazy about the Phantom Menace, but I still saw it 13 times in the theater until I just found myself in a place where I was okay with it. I was able to overlook certain things and just kind of dial into the things I liked. I loved Qui-Gon Jinn. I loved Darth Maul. I loved being Jar Jar in Binks. That world again. What do you say?
Jar Jar Binks. I know.
Jar Jar. Yes. Actually, Jar Jar never really bothered me. And what's interesting is that when I first started teaching, all my students loved Jar Jar. And then I watch it with my older kids, and they laughed at Jar Jar the way I laugh at the Three Stooges. And I couldn't believe it, but it was there for them. And my youngest thinks Jar Jar is hysterical. It's just kind of crazy. Star Wars serves up different things for different people at different times. Ryan, you mentioned how Star Wars is very much ubiquitous now and more accepted. I can certainly say that when I first started teaching, I'd maybe see 2 or 3 Star Wars shirts a semester. Now I see 2 or 3 Star Wars shirts an hour. And throughout the day, I'll see 40 different shirts or jackets or socks or whatever. And hey, Mr. Zare, did you see this? And all this kind of stuff. Students requesting, hey, can we watch The Mandalorian in mythology class? It's certainly something that has captivated us. I mean, I think the box office is showing it. And yes, while it can be divisive on Twitter, that's okay because there's conversation in this cultural zeitgeist that we have. And I think that in and of itself is interesting. Plus, it also teaches you who to mute when they're just being negative. It's okay not to like everything. In fact, I think it's more authentic when you say your no makes your yes weigh a lot more. That makes you a more insightful critic. Intellectual honesty is a positive thing. Critical thinking is a positive thing. So find your tribe, find your people that you like talking about this stuff with, that can have some perspective and enjoy it for what it actually is, a fictional story that encapsulates different mythological tropes that we believe as a culture and as a people.
Yeah, and I mean, Dan hit the nail on the head when he talked about it reaching so many different people with so many different elements of Star Wars. That's the problem And it's a blessing and the curse with Star Wars is that everybody comes at Star Wars with a personal appeal and a personal experience with it. So you two were a certain age, young and strapping in 1999, but I was in junior high.
We still are, by the way.
Yes. I'll drop the age jokes by the end of this. But I was in junior high when the prequels came out. That was the first trilogy. My first movie in the theaters was the special editions in 97, but that trilogy was my first it was like, these weren't my dad's movies anymore. And him and I went together, saw all three of those. My favorite Star Wars movie is The Phantom Menace. Okay. And if you have any of those Jar Jars left over you bought, Lou or Dan, just send them to me. But I will say that's what Disney's challenge was in 2012. How do you take a franchise that everybody experienced in a different way and make everyone happy? And the answer is that it's not possible. But in Chicago back in April, you came by our booth, Lou, and we had just watched the trailer. And I asked you, I said, does it feel like they're bringing everybody home just from that first trailer? And you said, there's something different about this. And you had told me back then, I haven't like 7, 8, Rogue One, Solo. None of these things have really tickled my fancy, but yet in just a 2-minute teaser, there's something there. And I said, I think just by that the words that J.J. Abrams spoke at that panel in Celebration and that teaser we first saw is I think the attempt for this movie at the end of the day is to bring everybody home. So if you're like me and the prequel trilogy was your first trilogy, then they're trying to bring you home. If you're like Lou and Dan and the original trilogy was your first trilogy, let's try to bring those home. And what we don't say, I said this on the last show of the year for us, I said, what we don't know about this trilogy is that there are millions of kids around the world who this is their first trilogy. In 20 years from now, we'll see the effects of what these characters, Rey, Finn, Poe, Kylo Ren, and everyone, that what they had on a new generation that's walking. You go to Galaxy's Edge and there's little mini Reys everywhere meeting Chewbacca and Rey, and they get so excited when they see Rey and even Kylo and the new Stormtroopers. And there's a generation that we haven't seen the effects of yet, and we won't see for almost 2 decades when they get a say in what Star Wars means to them. And so what I thought Episode 9 did, and I guess we'll do some spoiler alert. If you haven't seen it, I would probably run away, just mild spoilers. But what they did in certain moments was bring everybody home. And you had something for every Star Wars fan in this film, which was nearly impossible. My only complaint about The Rise of Skywalker is I wish it was 30 minutes longer. That's it, so that there could be more of it. But I think that was the task that JJ and the team had, was that everyone's coming at this from a million different angles, that it's possible to please everyone. But yet somehow I think they made a film that if this is your first Star Wars film you've ever seen, if you saw Star Wars in 1977, or if you saw the prequels in junior high in 99 like me, there's something in there for everyone. And we'll get to it later, but Disney's, you can tell that their shift went from let's sort of make these nostalgic movies that make the old fans happy to let's put out so many different options that no matter what your age, what your interest, or where you live, you can experience Star Wars in a way that makes you happy, but yet somehow we can all share it, whether it's your 85-year-old grandma asking about the green baby, or Luke crying in the theater with his son, sort of reflecting what happened in 1977 when you were sitting with your father. That is the stuff that makes Star Wars important. And if they lean on that, then the future is bright. And I think that's exactly what they're doing.
And one of the things I love about, there's many things I love about J.J. Abrams, but in terms of the masterful storytelling, some of the things that stuck with me most about Rise of Skywalker were not necessarily the big theatrical moments, right? It was the musical cues that throughout not only helped to tell the story, but brought me back to 1977. The few shots near the end where we see different worlds, different species, different planets, and some of those old ships coming up and rising up out of the forest, or my little Ewok friends coming together. Like I got choked up because I'm like, oh my God, I had that toy. I played with that toy when I was a kid. And the thing that I keep coming back to was, and I'm finding it hard to articulate it, right? Again, you talked about sort of the levels of fandom and bringing everybody together. But I think that this movie hits on so many different emotional levels. Like, again, I had those emotional feelings about thinking from a very personal standpoint of with my dad versus with my son, the emotional thing of this rekindling of my fandom, the same way that I had when I saw episode 4. I thought the film was full of so many surprises that I never saw coming that tugged on those heartstrings. Chewbacca's greatest moment for me was not when he was sad, but when he got his medal. Like, I don't know why. It's so stupid, right? But as kids, we were like, oh my God, why didn't Chewbacca get his medal? But it did such a wonderful job of the pulling of the strings from humor to sadness to joy. And look, this is where, people start talking about the ranking of the films. I am perfectly fine saying that for me, this is the best, most enjoyable Star Wars movie after the original trilogy. And maybe I'd even put it over Jedi. Like, I got to sort of think it out more, but that's how much I loved and was satisfied by this film. And it did something that no other film, cartoon, holiday special was ever able to do. Or maybe the holiday special was, but it rekindled my love of Star Wars. And I think that I am not alone.
I saw your recap from the theater. I think you put on Instagram, among other places. And I was very happy because I know that you desperately wanted to fall in love with The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, and it just didn't hit those notes for you. And that is more than okay. That's respectful because you're a discerning critic in your own mind too. For me, this movie, people said to me, what did you think? I said, I was satisfied. I was happy. If I were to rank The Rise of Skywalker, I would rank it the least of this sequel trilogy because unlike you, I think The Last Jedi is pretty much perfect, except for the Canto Bight stuff. I think it's a stroke of genius. I think it's a literary, it's just staggering, the literary value in this thing. I would even rank this one somewhere in the reigns of The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. And there's a lot of reasons why. That doesn't mean I don't really like it. I think I just got too much literature nonsense in my head that sometimes it's hard to turn that off, hard to turn that switch off. What I really liked about this movie, anytime that Rey and Kylo Ren / Ben Solo are on screen, I think is magic. I think for a character, and again, we are going into spoiler turf, for a character I didn't think should be or could be redeemed, it worked for me beautifully. It was extremely Shakespearean. His sacrifice, his love, his transition from, thinking outwardly and worrying about what everyone else thinks and trying to put on some sort of persona, defying inner peace and looking inwardly, which is an interesting juxtaposition of what certain characters do through their arcs. I thought that was great. And at the very end, the last couple of minutes when Rey was on Tatooine is absolute perfection. And when I saw at the premiere, I did something I'd never done before. I was yelling at the screen, like I was rooting and cheering, like it was before it started. I looked at my wife and said, I feel like Game 7 of the World Series when the Cubs were in it. I was just so nervous and excited because you're hanging on every word when Harrison shows up. I mean, if that doesn't get you emotionally, if that doesn't get you choked up, I don't know what will, because it was Kylo revisiting that key moment in his life and thinking about, this is how I wanted to go, but I was afraid. All of Star Wars is about facing your fear to be your best you. And I think that is such a great thing, as parents, as an educator, as just people of the world. I think if that's something we can pass on to people, that's why Star Wars is so powerful. And Rey has a yellow lightsaber, and that makes me so incredibly happy. I actually yelled out at the screen, "Yellow!" And my wife looked at me and she said, "What are you doing?" Like, she's got a yellow lightsaber. Do you know what? You know why that's important? Luke Skywalker, the original Kenner figure, had a yellow lightsaber, right? That's beautiful. It's so great how it comes full circle for us.
And you're able to enjoy that on a much deeper level where she's just able to enjoy it, just the film for what it is. And I think you can go into this movie not having seen or been intimately familiar with the characters and the stories and still enjoy this wonderful operatic story of good versus evil. You know who the good guys are, you know who the bad guys are, and it's just a wonderful story. Like, Ryan, you even said, I was very, very cautiously optimistic, but skeptical and scared. And I expected to go in, again, being excited, but being disappointed. And I just had fun. Like, I just enjoyed having fun and came out of the movie and couldn't wait to see it again. Look, I think the greatest testament is I went back again. I brought my family. My wife and daughter, who are not big Star Wars fans, freaked the freak out. Like my 16-year-old daughter, understand the context, walked out and has been asking me ever since, when can we go see Star Wars again?
That's
Words
great.
that have never come out of her mouth before.
It's great.
Yeah.
That's the fun part about it. Experiencing it with your family and having our people in our family who are not huge Star Wars fans, but they're just, interested in a good story and they have a lot of fun with it. And this movie is great fun. There's lots of thrills and chills, and you can experience that with your family and wanting to go back for more and more. That's what it's all about.
We keep getting this question because Disney and Lucasfilm and everybody said, this is it, the end of the episodic Star Wars. There'll be Star Wars in the future, but it won't be what it was. This, to me, what Star Wars is forming in front of our very own eyes in multiple different facets. But what Star Wars was for the last 42 years was buried in that sand in Tatooine. That's what I said about that moment. That was the most meta moment in Star Wars history to me, because I felt like it was JJ, because this is the very first fans trilogy. George Lucas did not really have anything to do with these three films. And so what I thought was that moment to me was JJ Abrams taking those two lightsabers, wrapping them up. And to me, that was George Lucas's legacy. That was George Lucas's Star Wars. And he put them in the sand and buried them. And what we saw was Rey looking out. And that was sort of that was a message to me that the fans are taking what George built and his legacy and buried in that sand. That was a moment that felt like a message to George Lucas, or it was almost like she was burying Luke. And as Luke and Leia looked on and the twin sons were there, they went back to where George began and buried that in there. So there were moments like that. I kept thinking to myself, like Dan, at first I was like, well, I kind of like The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi better. But then I started to think about it. I thought the way they handled Carrie Fisher was beautiful in this film. Way beyond my expectations. The way that they made her have an impact on her son, even though she wasn't there to film the scenes, I just thought the Harrison Ford and Adam Driver moment was the best in the trilogy for me. There were just so many moments where the highs are the ultimate highs. I've never rooted for Lando Calrissian harder than I did in this film. So this is a film that makes you stand up and cheer. And we can critique it if we want. We can talk about why this and that. Or what I chose to do was, this film wants you to stand up and cheer. It wants you to feel hopeful, and it wants you to watch as George Lucas's legacy is wrapped up safely and buried so that future generations can discover it. And that is what I took out of this. And I still cannot, the more I think about the moments that make you pump your fist, the more I just do it in the middle of the grocery store when I'm shopping, because I can't stop thinking about it.
Right. Just enjoy it on its face.
Yeah.
And hopefully no one's standing by you when you're doing that.
No.
I thought the great thing about the power, the pathos of the Carrie Fisher moments was that if you didn't know better, it would feel very organic, like she had filmed those scenes or sequences. I thought, of course, it's a tribute to ILM and the lighting and all the things that they did. But the fact they're able to get a performance and give you that emotional pull, that tug, it didn't feel like a gimmick. It didn't feel cheap. It was authentic and beautiful. And the fact that we can feel the way that we feel about her death and how she becomes one of the Force, because when Ben actually passes away, the fact that we feel that connection is incredible, because they don't spend a single second on screen together for the entire trilogy. Mm. Yet we put those dots together in our brains. That's a testament to very powerful storytelling and us being invested in what's going on. I think that's pretty remarkable.
I kept on saying that I was so incredibly impressed at how he was able, and I know we're using JJ, obviously there's a team, but how he was able to bring things full circle. And again, that sense of completion and satisfaction, which, is so very hard to do. Look, I was thinking about, look, I'm a huge fan of Lost, right? And I remember the way people reacted to the ending of Lost. There was a lot of people who were upset about it. And here, like, I was happy with the ending of Lost, just as I was happy with the ending here, because of, and I keep sort of coming back to this, it's the way it made me feel. I felt happy. I felt excited. Like you, I was, cheering and clapping and like yelling at the screen, which I haven't done, in a long, long time. And I think that's why I look, I'm not sitting here dissecting the film and does this make sense? Does this feel? No, I just am stepping back and going, I really enjoyed that. I want to go see it again. And I think that's the greatest compliment that I could give to it is my desire to want to go back and immediately see it in the theater again, as opposed to, I'll wait till it comes out on DVD or streaming and then maybe I'll watch it again. Like even now talking about it, I'm like, you know what? I need to go see it one more time or twice again.
How many times have you both seen it so far?
I've seen it twice so far, and I'm going again probably next week.
Cool.
I'm at 3 right now, which is low for me.
Right. Well, I mean, it's hard when you got little ones, but it's 4 for me, and I've saw basically 4 times in a week, and now I think I'm going to let it marinate a little bit more. I got to see it again at least one more time before it leaves the theater.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, just the last moment for me that when I mentioned earlier about it had something for every fan, I'm sure Lou, and I think you told me this before, you're not ready to give Hayden Christensen an Oscar, but as a middle schooler, he was Anakin Skywalker for me. I mean, I had his lightsaber. I think I was him for Halloween. Now that was last year, but in middle school too. And when I heard his voice in the voice scene and Ashley Eckstein's voice is in there, and there's characters from Rebels where Freddie Prinze Jr. as Kanan Jarrus was in there. Mace Windu, Qui-Gon Jinn is a fan of all the animated series and the prequels. That was a nod from JJ that he didn't have to do, or the writers or whoever. They didn't have to do that. But yet, again, I think there was a concerted effort. There's little things you don't even notice in the scene where they're in the one who steals the movie, Babu Frick, when they're in his droid shop. Behind 3PO, while they're having this little emotional moment, is a battle droid just leaning up against the wall. There are moments that you don't even realize, but there are nods that I think, again, what this film does is when I said brings everybody home, it brings everybody home. So even if you don't like every part of the movie, if you're an original trilogy fan, I want you to take note. You get Carrie Fisher, Billy D. Williams, Harrison Ford, and Mark Hamill in another movie. And they even gave John Williams a cameo. So, I mean, they literally took everybody and said, let's go home together and let's bury this thing in the sand of Tatooine for a final time. And that, to me, above all else that we can talk about the movie, whether this is the first Star Wars movie you ever saw, or this you've seen it 100 times or anything, I think that is the overall message that I took leaving all 3 times from the Rise of Skywalker.
Can we announce now? Is it safe to say, Lou, to tell everyone that you were actually Babu Frick? That was actually
I was the life model for
yes.
I thought he was in the Ewok costume, which is why you brought that up, but I wasn't going to say
he was Wicked's son. Yes.
I'm not really allowed to talk about my role.
Fair. Yeah, the legal stuff.
Yeah. But I think there's a huge I'm going to call it the rewritability factor to help us sort of transition, because there is a gigantic rewatchability, because the first time you're seeing it, you're just in awe and you're just trying to digest it all. And then you go back and you're able to watch it with a little bit more of a trained eye, looking for things, listening for things. I spent a lot of time like listening, not just to the voices in the background, but the music and just some of the little sounds. Like we know the sounds a little like Imperial, like droid, the do, but some of the other little sounds that were callbacks to, again, for me, the original trilogy. But I deliberately used rewritability factor because, again, timing being everything, before the Rise of Skywalker, we have the Rise of the Resistance and everything that happened with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. And again, we don't want or need this to be a complete, discussion again about every part of it. But, and I almost forgot even Star Tours. So Star Tours now has, I don't even want to call it a new scene. I was able to see it the day that it premiered. And Star Tours is one of those attractions that I don't really ride a lot. If there's a low line, or if I have friends in town that want to ride, I rode it 3 times so far with the new scene from Rise of Skywalker. And I'm remiss to call it a new scene because it feels like an entirely new attraction, because just like the movie, there's a part where just when you think it's over, there's more fun ahead. I don't remember smiling and laughing without the expectation of doing so as when I rewrote Star Tours. But Rise of the Resistance, I see why all good things come to those who wait. Rise of the Resistance was worth waiting for. And I think Ryan, I know we talked about this when we sort of did our sort of live review. Rise of the Resistance is a remarkable attraction, not a remarkable Star Wars attraction. It is a remarkable theme park attraction. And I think is in the argument very high of worldwide one of the top 3 Disney attractions in any theme park around the world. I think it's, and again, it's completely subjective, but the way that attraction made me feel was more than how I felt when I got off Flight of Passage, which elicited an emotional response. I know I'm going through menopause. I cry at everything, but when Flight of Passage in Pandora is over, it's over. And then you sort of walk downstairs and it's over. When Rise is over, it's not, because it sort of transitions out into this land and this world. And it really is about not just living, but making up your own Star Wars adventure. And I think the timing just worked out so well with Batuu and Smuggler's Run and then Resistance and then going right into Rise of Skywalker. I think these are a lot of the things that sort of helped. I think each one makes the other one better, if that makes any sense.
They scaffolded an education term. We scaffolding. They just continue to build upon one another in such a unique way. I feel like Galaxy's Edge is my favorite thing about all of Star Wars the entire year, including The Mandalorian, including movies, everything. I think Galaxy's Edge takes me to a different level. And then when you look at Rise of the Resistance, more than anything else I've ever experienced, I've been very blessed to do a lot of cool Star Wars stuff in my life. I felt like I was in a Star Wars movie, and not like I was playing pretend, but it just feels like you're authentically a part of the Star Wars story. You're living in the movie, being inside, the Star Destroyer, or having the First Order guards stare at you and browbeat you with their arms, perfectly folded reverse akimbo as they're strolling through the hallway. And once you're done on the attraction itself, and you drop, which, by the way, I do think is a legitimate drop. I'm also kind of a wuss when it comes to that kind of thing. When you walk out, you're still on Batuu and you're living in this experience. What Rise of the Resistance did for me is it made me buy in to the plight between the Resistance and the First Order and love it in a way like I used to love the Rebels against the Empire. And the First Order and Resistance, I was like, that's cool. I get it. That's where we're at. I never felt like it just had me, but emotionally, Rise of the Resistance made me appreciate that aspect of the story and love that part of the story. Again, it's a magical thing. And then when you get the Galactic Starcruiser that's coming out, in the next year and a half, my goodness. I mean, we're going to need plastic surgeons to get the smiles off our faces.
Yeah. I first off, the biggest endorsement to Rise of the Resistance is we went to the media event and I talked to Lou and we were in line and this is, the media event. So it wasn't like a real queue. And I said, man, I'm so glad we're doing this because, I can't imagine the line or the wait for this. And Lou's like, oh yeah, I'm me too. I'm not going to do it. So, right, lo and behold, the ride opens and then I log onto Facebook one day and yet there's a post from Lou Mongello. He's like, here's my day. Got up at 3:45 a.m. And I was like, it's so good that you're willing, even if you've ridden it, to get up at 3, 4, 5 a.m. just to ride it one more time. And that is a true testament to it. And like Dan, we've had The Mandalorian, we've had The Rise of Skywalker, we've had Star Wars Celebration, we've had, this has been a big year. We had the opening Galaxy's Edge. The greatest thing I've done Star Wars this year is Rise of the Resistance. Yeah. And if you take away the emotion behind seeing the first film with your father or your mother or your family, or if you take away just the emotion aspect of it, the greatest thing you can experience to me as a Star Wars fan is to get on this attraction. And I still, even though I've seen the movie, even though I've seen The Mandalorian now, and there's another season of Clone Wars coming up, it is still the best thing to do as a Star Wars fan is Rise of the Resistance. Second place is probably ordering a Ronto wrap because they're that good. But first place easily is Rise of the Resistance, for me, it's still the greatest Star Wars experience that I've had, taking the emotion out of it.
Well, just seeing, to me, the best part about Galaxy's Edge is just seeing the Falcon, because that's sort of like the hub. I mean, it's literally a hub, and it's also just sort of the anchor for all of this. And that's the one thing that I feel like was missing from the prequel trilogy, besides the smarminess of Han Solo, was seeing the Millennium Falcon. And that is kind of the glue that brings us all together. And it creates these incredible feelings that are positive, as opposed to the incredible feelings you have when you drink the green milk.
You know, Lou, in the documentary that we made for Star Tours, I asked you, because I wasn't alive at that time. In the 80s, I said, what was it like when the news of Star Wars and Lucas coming together? And you said at that time, everyone said, of course, this makes sense. And what Galaxy's Edge and Rise of the Resistance and seeing the Falcon is, to me, is a realization of two dreams. Not only what we all want as Star Wars fans, which is to go. As soon as you see your very first Star Wars movie or Star Wars TV show or whatever, however you got into Star Wars, I think almost everyone's first reaction is, I want to go there. I want to experience that. And so that fulfills this dream. And then there was a second dream, and I think it's Walt Disney's dream. When you think of what he wanted to do with Disneyland, I think Galaxy's Edge is the ultimate culmination of that. It's that you go, the outside world doesn't exist. Everywhere you look is a story. You're on stage and you're experiencing the films or the television shows or whatever at the time. You know, all the early Disneyland rides where it was putting you in the film and you were the main character, right? Everything that's why certain rides were made certain ways, right? You were in Peter Pan, you were in Snow White, you were those things. And to me, Galaxy's Edge is the ultimate realization of two dreams, of creating a world that George Lucas created that we actually get to go to now. We actually get to walk up to the real Falcon. We get to go into a room with two AT-ATs. We get to do those things. And then I think Walt's dream was, I think that, and I don't know, but if you were to take Walt to any of the properties, if I was in charge, if he came back to life and he said, I got one day, take me somewhere, the first place I'm taking him is Galaxy's Edge, because I think he will say exactly what I was thinking in the 1950s.
I think you're you're spot on. You know, I think that was the driving force behind Fantasyland, right? He wanted to put you in the stories, in the movies. He wanted you to sort of not be an observer, but be almost the protagonist. That's what people didn't get about the original Snow White. They're like, where's Snow White? Why is she not here? It's like, because you were supposed to be Snow White. You were supposed to be living her story. This is an extension of that, because it's not another character story. It really is creating it yourself. And you mentioned the AT-AT and you mentioned the Falcon. The first time I saw the Falcon, when I went out to the event in Disneyland, I was very surprised at how choked up I got, because I'm like, I had in my mind been so emotionally distant from the property. I'm like, why is this salty discharge coming from my eyes? Because I saw the toy that I played with and imagine, I used to take the top off and you played with all the action figures inside. And then when I was Rise of the Resistance, I'm giddy, right? I'm having so much fun, and I'm able to sort of watch it with my son going through it. And then I went into the AT-AT room and I got that same like lump in my throat. Why? Because it brought me back to being, in 1980, 1981, laying on the floor of my basement in Plainfield, New Jersey, trying to be sort of having a character eye view. So I'd be playing with my little Luke Skywalker, action figure and the snowspeeder crash, trying to look up at my, giant AT-AT toy. That's exactly what that made me feel. And I thought it was just remarkable that I'm sure that's not the emotion that they were going for, but it hit me on that level. And I have a question for you, because I thought about this afterwards, and this is going to be a relatively large spoiler if you haven't seen Rise of Skywalkers yet. I thought back in hindsight, when you are in the detention cell in Rise of the Resistance, did General Hux help you escape?
I have thought about that. I've heard that. I've heard that because, spoiler, Hux, as Poe said, what? He helps the Resistance, and in this one, not to spoil the ride too much, because I'm sure more people have seen Rise of Skywalker than Rise of Resistance, but the storyline is that you're captured by the First Order, yet things start to click into place where you somehow escape relatively unscathed. So the question is, how is that possible? This is getting real nerdy here, guys, but according to the visual guides and the things that have come out around the movie, it's been confirmed that Batuu, when you go to Galaxy's Edge, takes place 6 months before the Rise of Skywalker. So it's 6 months after The Last Jedi and 6 months before the Rise of Skywalker. So it's smack dab right in the middle between the two films. So it does kind of line up when you start to think about it. Just something to think about. Yeah.
So maybe the twinkle in Ryan's eye is what moved Hux to start to change his heart.
I do have that effect. That has been known to happen.
It's true.
You know, whatever it is, again, this too, it hit on every note, excuse me, for me. And I've been on it with people who are not huge Star Wars fans. And I find myself watching their reactions as much as I was watching the attraction to see how they were responding to it and to see their mouths agape at certain scenes. There was a lot of things that are very unexpected there. It's an incredibly complex attraction. So if it goes down, be understanding, be patient, because the complexity. But when you're in that final room, and again, I don't want to spoil it, but when you're in that final room with Kylo, and there's very much a 4D type effect that takes place, I'm just like, oh my, like that was just, I mean, I was smiling ear to ear because I didn't see or feel that coming. And I couldn't wait to ride again. And we'll talk more about this as we start to, bring all these things together. But the way it made me feel in terms of what I wanted to do next, it wasn't just go eat. I wanted to do more. I wanted to bring it home with me. And I think that's the sign of a very well done attraction, not just in terms of the experience, but again, how it makes you feel. And we started to briefly mention, I think this is the great way to transition into The Mandalorian, because you talk about where it takes place in terms of being after Jedi and the fall of the Empire, but before Force Awakens and the whole rise of the First Order. This, again, not knowing what to expect other than having faith in Jon Favreau, who also I love. I loved him when he was in Rudy, who's the wild man now. But this too, you don't have to know and love any of the films to enjoy it, right? I sometimes when I watch, and I've watched the first episode 3 times, I've watched the last episode 3 times. I love how it ties into the films. It ties into Clone Wars. You don't have to know anything, but it might help. There's amazing Easter eggs in there. The Life Day robes. That's all I'm going to say. The score is such an incredible storytelling element. But what I liked about this is when I talk about the feel, it feels like Star Wars to me, right? I keep talking about episode 4 being dirty and gritty, and this is new but familiar. And it made me sort of think back in terms of the look and feel to episode 4. Like it felt like Star Wars, yet there's not one lightsaber battle in the entire show, right? And I also, in terms of the storytelling itself, I like how each episode is an individual story, but it's sort of weaved into a grander tale. And it made me think back to, I used to love the X-Files, right? I still kind of love the X-Files, right? And each episode sort of stood on its own, but it really was about this overarching story of Mulder and Scully, and that all these things eventually tie together. And I loved also with Mandalorian, I think we're sort of seeing these stories from an entirely new perspective, as it were. And I think the thing that amazed me most is, and I know you guys are much deeper in this than I am, but from what I sort of the pulse that I sort of feel is there's overall positive reviews for this. I don't you never see that, right? There's not a lot of negativity that's being around, that's surrounding the Mandalorian. But Dan and Ryan, your thoughts?
No, I agree. One thing that the Mandalorian seems to be doing, it seems to be a great balm for fandom because everyone seems to love it and very, very passionately and very, very strongly. And what I think that the Mandalorian does when Star Wars is at its best, it takes those things that are deeply a part of it, the nostalgia, the characters, the very clear distinction of good and evil, and creates a story that captivates us because of the compelling characters. And we want to see where the mythology will take them and where they're going to go. What the Mandalorian does is it takes those ideas and those archetypes and they put it into a Western kind of cinematic lens. They had that incredible score. That's some of the best Star Wars music I think I've ever heard. And then it makes it feel original and fresh, but still familiar. When Luke says there's something familiar about this place in The Empire Strikes Back before he meets Yoda for the first time, that's that feeling that I have when I watch The Mandalorian. And it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like a gimmick either. It just feels like this is a new direction to take it. And I think Star Wars is really at its best when it reinvents itself by trying new things, but also giving us that familiar stuff that we like. Because The Mandalorian, when I first heard about The Mandalorian and the concept of it, I was extremely underwhelmed. And I thought, I don't really want to see that kind of Star Wars. I don't feel like it's not going to give me hope. It's not going to give me optimism. It's going to be very cynical, and he's going to be just this violent gunslinger that doesn't speak. Turns out he's got more heart than a lot of characters in Star Wars or a lot of politicians. He's really cares. And he does it in different ways. And the fact that Pedro Pascal can make us feel these emotions when he pretty much never takes off that helmet, but you know what he's feeling by his posture, by the way he tilts his head, by the way he carries himself and his shoulders. I think that's amazing. I think Pedro Pascal's performance, the way he's selling us on this character, and of course the child is a big deal, and it's kind of become a thing unto itself that's almost transcended Star Wars in many ways. I just think that's great. The fact that we care so much about these characters that are pretty much we've known for 5 minutes. I think that's great. And I think another masterstroke that Disney Plus did was they took a different route with the streaming and they did it weekly. Because now instead of this white hot moment of a streaming service that of a series that drops within a week and a half, everybody's over it. This has kept the conversation going for 2 months, 2.5 months, and kept it fresh in our minds. I think that's when it's going to make it stand the test of time.
That's why I loved Lost, right? Because part of what I loved about Lost is when that end title card came up, I would stand up and scream at my TV like, "Oh my God, you can't!" And then we would talk about it and we would think about it, and then we would start that anticipation for the next week and sort of recap in our minds what went on. That's what we're doing with Mandalorian. That thirst that we have for the next episode makes it taste even better.
I think what The Mandalorian does is two things. It carries Disney Plus in a way that I don't think anybody saw coming, because you saw that big catalog dump that Disney Plus did leading up to the release, and you're like, this thing is loaded, yet I've really only heard about The Mandalorian, and then what you hear is, oh, this is also great, and this is also great. So it's kind of nice to get some other stuff to get some shine now that The Mandalorian has stopped, but to not spoil it, because this is, everyone's probably in a different spot. Baby Yoda, I'm going to call him Baby Yoda. I don't know who's in charge, Bob Iger, whoever, get over it. I'm going to call it Baby Yoda, but Baby Yoda has taken the entire world by storm, whether you've even seen the show or not. And that's very important because, like I said, that has been the most mainstream Star Wars thing I've ever seen in my lifetime. But quietly, behind Baby Yoda, everything else happening in the show is amazing character development, a story that you are captivated by. And in the season finale, what felt so great about it was there were so many payoffs from things that were building through all 8 episodes. And so you kind of realize at the end of it, yeah, Baby Yoda has taken the world by storm. It's taken me by storm. I love Baby Yoda.
I'm literally holding a pair of Baby Yoda socks up to the camera in my hand.
Exactly, right? People are just so desperate. I think they could put out Baby Yoda coffee beans and people would buy it, whether you drink coffee or not. Just give me something, Baby Yoda. I think there's a story behind it that is really well done and thought out, and there's payoff throughout the season. And now you can't wait for season 2 with what they left you off on season 1. And what I've said about The Mandalorian, because look, again, everywhere I turn, I'm a member, and this is a plug, Lou. You can take this as a plug. I'm a member of the Box People group for your show. And a lot of times it's Disney World Post, and I love seeing it. But lately, it's been Baby Yoda, Mandalorian. Did you see this? Mandalorian in a Disney World specific group. It's Mandalorian. It's everywhere you look, it's Mandalorian. And a lot of it's because Baby Yoda. But I think if it was just Baby Yoda, then that would be a gimmick. But it's not a gimmick. There's a story behind Baby Yoda. There's a story behind the Mandalorian. There's a story behind every person we've seen in the show. And every question I keep getting is, okay, well, I keep hearing these connections to Clone Wars and Rebels. Should I watch? Just watch it. No matter whether you've seen a second of Star Wars before, watch this show. And what's great about for Star Wars and for Disney is now Disney Plus is right there. You see connections to Clone Wars or Rebels. You can pull up and just start streaming. And I think a lot of people are going to start coming to the larger Star Wars universe because of this show specifically. So if Baby Yoda has done anything, it has created another set of lifelong Star Wars fans that were brought in by a little green alien that is on loose socks right now. So I just think it's been brilliant on so many different levels. And I think that what you're seeing is Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, who is in charge of the animated series, and now he's got his live action debut, and he's Jon Favreau's partner on this, are probably going to be who you see in charge of making Star Wars in the future, because they are able to show that they can bring in all fans, respect all fans in where they come from, bring in the mainstream, and get people interested in other content that's out there. So to me, I think it's a master. This is the best rollout of a streaming series that I have personally ever seen, because things like Stranger Things and other things get dumped in one night. No one really talks about them. They're there. Everybody streams it the one night they can, and you don't talk about it again. Dan nailed it right on the head. Every single week, it's what's Baby Yoda going to do next? And even if Baby Yoda's not much in the episode, you're amazed by the character development between a guy that never takes off his mask and folks that are coming in and out every other week.
You guys hit it on a number of different levels. I agree with you about the performance of a character, of an actor whose face you do not see, who cannot emote other than the way he makes subtle movements. I have an affinity for this character because of this paternal role he was thrust into and the way he cares for this child. I cannot say enough good things, again, acknowledging that it's a team, but the storytelling of Jon Favreau, Iron Man, Elf, Couples Retreat, and now the Mandalorian. And I think they did, and if it was his call or whoever, to, yes, while we lost out on and Disney lost out on millions of dollars on Baby Yoda, the child merchandise sales this holiday season, it was brilliant to have. Look, one of the things about the Mandalorian are the elements of real surprise. Baby Yoda at the end of episode 1 was a huge surprise. They lost out on the dollars on the front end, but it's a much bigger win overall at the end because it wasn't spoiled for us. It was something that literally nobody saw coming. And I think the thing about the Mandalorian that, for me, captured me very quickly was that I found that I was caring about these characters. And it's something that I really did not do after the original trilogy. Jake Lloyd, right. I know you were a kid. Hayden Christensen, whatever. But, I mean, look, even Rogue One, I know a lot of people like Rogue One, and while I like the guy with the bow staff, I couldn't tell you what his name is. Chirrut
Inway.
That guy. Yeah. That's telling, right? The fact that I don't know who it is because, again, spoiler alert, because that's the end of their story, because it's the end of their life. I care about these. I care about these characters, even though I might not know who they are. Even at the end of episode 8, I very much care about what happens with that dark figure and the thing that he's holding in his hand that my son knew about. As we were watching, all of a sudden he's telling me, and I was almost not listening because I was just in amazement, that he had gone off on his own to find out about this and read about this and watch some of the other things. And I was like, you're in too. Like you're back into, and I'll talk more about this at the end, but how sort of we're brought back into this Star Wars universe. And Ryan, I think you hit it right on the head. I don't think we've seen a time like this since the original Star Wars came out, where it transcends the hardcore fandom and the moviegoers and into the state of general pop culture excitement and phenomenon. I mean, Baby Yoda's more than a meme, although Ryan, like you said, Dan, like you said, when you open up Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, chances are you're going to see Baby Yoda in some drinking coffee or something in some way, shape, or form.
Yes. Oh, it's absolutely true. And again, the fact that people who are not Star Wars fans are talking about the child very, very commonplace and very, very enthusiastically, I think is a testament to the storytelling. And, I feel like it's fair to say that with Solo and things like that Disney and Lucasfilm took kind of a hit through some channels marketing wise. And maybe that's fair. Maybe it doesn't. I'm certainly not a marketing genius. What I do know is that the way they've handled The Mandalorian and promoted it and promoted Disney Plus, I think we're seeing how effective that is. And when you combine that with good storytelling, a good cast, a good score, people are going to remember something like this. And Star Wars is something that we remember. Yes, there is nostalgia there, but the nostalgia, again, I keep saying this, but it's not done as a gimmick. It's done because that's an authentic part of the rewritability of this experience.
Yeah, I think overall, and I guess I know we'll get to the overall element of it, it's just for the first time as a hardcore Star Wars fan since I was really 4 years old, this thing has captivated me all the way up till now. It's something my kids are young, but it's something I'm starting to indoctrinate them with, if you want to call it that. I tell my wife I'm naturally letting them come to it. They'll like it. If they want to, they're going to like it. But I just think there's never been The Mandalorian, I think, is probably the number one thing, because not everybody can get to Walt Disney World. Not everybody is interested in sitting in a 2.5 hour movie for something they're only casually interested in. That's why they have Disney Plus or they'll rent it or whatever, But for The Mandalorian, a ton of people have Disney Plus, and it's something I can talk to my coworkers and my family who's only mildly interested in. It's something that it brings us all together even more than the other things we've mentioned for this year. And I think even more than 1977, the original Star Wars is a true piece of art and masterpiece. But when you watch it, if I was an 8-year-old and I watched it for the first time, I might ask why those are clearly 70s effects, right? There are things where for this, it's all ages, it's all interests. It's got the cute and the funny factor. It's got the serious. It's got the development factor. It's got payoffs. This is another series where there's multiple times where in this last chapter, it makes you kind of angry for a second, but you're also standing up and cheering. So I just think that they could not have entered the streaming wars that Disney has entered with a better hand and a better strategy than what we've seen. And I love The Mandalorian because it's incredibly interesting and it's got so much for hardcore and non-hardcore fans. But the element that everyone around the water cooler in 2019, 2020, whatever year we're in now, there isn't a lot of water cooler talk anymore because everybody's watching something different or they're watching a different thing on the news. Everyone's living so many separate lives because we have more than 3 channels. But now, for the first time in a long time, I think The Mandalorian has transcended Star Wars and transcended fandom, and it's something people talk about around the water cooler now. And that is something that it's beautiful that Star Wars and Disney got to do it together. And that's why in 2012, when they purchased Lucasfilm, this is the perfect marriage because it's got something that people care about. Two different companies that people care deeply about. When they come together, they create experiences that everyone can enjoy. And The Mandalorian, to me, is a perfect example of that, where the entire world, well, unless you don't have Disney Plus, but at least the entire USA are coming together around the water cooler and talking about a little green puppet.
And I agree. And I want to believe that this was all part of a master plan and a master strategy in terms of timing, in terms of pricing. Look, when I think we all heard the pricing of Disney Plus being $6.99 a month, we're like, didn't you forget a 1 in front of there? Nobody expected it to be literally the price of a cup of coffee. But to your point, Ryan, I was at a friend's house for New Year's Eve, and there was, a bunch of people talk. As I was walking around the room, and by walking around the room, I mean going to get food from different parts of the kitchen, there were 3 separate conversations going on, each one talking about The Mandalorian. There was a bunch of guys off in the corner nerding out about, George Lucas and wishing they could see the treatments of what his original final trilogy would have looked like and what The Mandalorian means and what's next. There was another group talking about Baby Yoda and merchandise, and there was a group of kids that were playing with their Oculus, and then there was conversations I heard going on about whether or not they're going to how are they going to make a black saber crystal to sell at Doc Onder's Den of Antiquities next time they go back to Galaxy's Edge. And I sort of just stood there in the middle of this triad, and I was fascinated. I'm like, when else would this be the topic of conversation in every sort of little pod of people at a New Year's Eve party? And I just thought that was, you talked about sort of entering beyond just a pop culture and a nerd reference, it's sort of the zeitgeist. I mean, that's really what these all have done, right? It's gotten us excited about Star Wars again. I think for a lot of people, Rise of Skywalker, for lack of a better term, it fixes Star Wars and maybe some of the mistakes that they felt were made along the way. It did for me. It brought me back in. I keep going back to feel. I felt happy. I felt love for the characters. I feel sympathy. IG-11. Like, I feel bad for poor IG-11. Like, I feel the story of love and family, which is really what Star Wars is all about, right? It's all about stories of families and Mando the dad. And to me, it feels like all these things feel like, and I don't know him, obviously, but I almost sort of feel like these would be things that George Lucas would do, or at least like. And maybe it's something that, that I sort of hope is that he looks at it and says, he'd be happy and satisfied with it. The same way we look at Walt and say, I think Walt would like this. But I'm telling you, I have, much like I think my dad did with me, like it's become a something to continue to bond with my son over, right? He came out and he wants to go back to Galaxy's Edge. He wants to get a new lightsaber. He wants to build a droid. These are all things that he did not want to do originally, but Mandalorian and Skywalker and Resistance and Star Tours, all these things coming together. Again, it's sort of that perfect intersection of all 3. Now, mind you, it's now because of this going to cost me a lot more money because I have to go buy an Oculus Quest and Vader Immortal, and Santa Claus brought him a legacy saber, and he's going to go build a droid in a couple of days. But that makes me really happy.
Experiencing Star Wars with your kids, your family, of course, but with your kids, it's great because, like you talked about before, you remember seeing it with your parents, and then you're passing it on, like Luke and Yoda talk about in The Last Jedi, where, we about passing on what you have learned and sharing those moments and those experiences. And because of the brilliance of Star Wars merchandising, I'm proud of you. You haven't said the flamethrower yet. Every time we say the word merchandising, I think it's cool that you can build a lightsaber, that you can build a droid, that you can wear a t-shirt that says The Mandalorian, or have the child's socks, and it's just an accepted part of culture that people don't even bat an eye, because this is a great thing that brings people together. Your story about that, it was New Year's Day, right? That walking around experiencing that is so cool, because a good fiction, a good piece of culture brings people together to have conversation, to have experiences together, and it's stuff that lasts the test of time. That's what Star Wars continues to do. It reinvents itself. George was great about that. Now Iger and Kathleen Kennedy and the team at Lucasfilm are doing that as well. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni certainly are instrumental in that success. But it creates this environment and this culture where, people from who would have not necessarily talked to or seen each other, but Star Wars brought the 3 of us together. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of friends and family because of Star Wars, because of Disney, and they become authentic friendships, not because of a lightsaber, because they bring up those ideas and those motifs and those fundamental things that we respond to that makes a good story so powerful. Ever since, 2000 plus years ago, when the first bards told the story of Odysseus or Beowulf, there are certain cultural things that are inherent in these stories that teach us about what we value and what we care about. And I just think it's great that Star Wars does that for us now.
And this isn't something a lot of people that maybe aren't like Dan and I would know this, but back in 2012, before the Disney purchase, this franchise was pretty close to being dead. The two things that Star Wars Celebration was excited about in 2012 was Angry Birds Star Wars and a cartoon called Star Wars Detours that they haven't even released because it was essentially
Family Guy spoofs too.
Family. I mean, this is what we're talking. Like, we've talked about a $1 billion theatrical release this year, a television show that's the biggest of all time, a theme park. In 2012, this conversation would have been like, did you see Angry Birds Star Wars 2?
Robot Chicken. Remember Robot Chicken?
Yes.
Robot. I mean, this is so in 2012, you can say what you want about Disney owning Marvel and Lucasfilm, and you can say whether you think it was a good idea for Star Wars to sell out to the corporate overlords, whatever you feel like. But here's the thing: without that purchase, this conversation that's happened tonight and is happening at New Year's Eve parties, and the lightsabers that are being built, and the droids, and the like I said earlier, this generation of millions upon millions of kids who this trilogy will carry them, and they'll take their kids to see whatever Star Wars is 20 years from now. That doesn't happen without that purchase of Lucasfilm in 2012. And I like to call this the first phase that we're ending right now. The trilogy is over. The spinoff movies are over. The first live action series, the first season has come, and we've seen what that looks like. Both theme parks are open, and coming in a couple of weeks, they're going to be completed with Rise of the Resistance. So the first phase is kind of ended. And yet I have never felt better about a franchise because there's never been more ways to be a Star Wars fan. If you see The Mandalorian and you love it, you can then, it's like getting off an attraction and you're going into a gift shop. And the gift shop is, well, there's The Mandalorian over here, and there's Clone Wars and Rebels I can watch on Disney Plus here, and there's 9 movies over here, and there's spinoff movies here, and there's a theme park over here. And that is the best thing that could have ever happened to this franchise. And whether you've seen Star Wars once, if you're listening to this because you love Lou and you never even watched Star Wars, look at all the choices you have to experience. And that is, to me, I said in the last show of the year for us, I said, for some reason, we got to live in the time where it's the best time to be a Star Wars fan. Let's not waste that. And some of the memories, I mean, the testament of things is, for Galaxy's Edge, we did a broadcast night for our show where me and 4 friends went, and we did a bunch of Facebook Live broadcasts from Galaxy's Edge. And my wife went, and she hates Star Wars. And she loved going that night at Galaxy's Edge. It's a night we still talk about. There were 6 of us that rode Smuggler's Run. It was the perfect group. If you have 6, it is the perfect way to experience that attraction. We went to Oga's. We've been to Oga's twice now with my wife. She would never be caught dead in a Star Wars bar, but she wanted to go back because it was an atmospheric thing. There are, my kids love The Mandalorian because of Baby Yoda. My kids are 3 and 2. They ask me all the time, can we watch the baby spaceship show? And I said, we can definitely watch the baby spaceship show. And guess what? My wife, who's a Game of Thrones fan, loves Pedro Pascal, watched all 8 chapters. This is something that would not have happened in 2012. And now, fast forward through the first phase, here we are. It is the best possible thing that could have happened to this franchise. And some of my greatest memories of Star Wars have happened in the last 7 years. Having lunch with Lou Mongello at Docking Bay 7, riding Rise of the Resistance. Lou, every time we see each other from now on, I think we'll always remember the time a First Order officer got in your face when you had the audacity to ask if we could sit in the blue section. That's something I won't forget, because it was like, I feel like I'm in a Star Wars movie, not because I was in a Star Destroyer hangar, but because somebody I know is getting accosted by the First Order. That is, to me, if you're a Star Wars fan, if you're a casual fan, if you've only watched a few things, if you're only a Mandalorian fan, only a Galaxy's Edge fan, no matter what, there's so many different ways to be a Star Wars fan in 3D, 4D, on the small screen, on the big screen. You mentioned VR is something they're focusing on and going to keep and double down on in the future. You walk around New Year's Eve, and Star Wars is something that's bringing people of all ages together, which is what it's supposed to do at the end of the day. And so, to me, there's never been a better time to be a Star Wars fan, and there's never been a better time to share it with your friends, your family. And if it's something that can bring everybody together in 2020, which seems impossible, then I think I will always applaud George Lucas and Bob Iger for shaking hands in 2012, because look what it's done to the franchise, to us, to fans. It's been the best thing that could have ever happened to it, looking back 7 years in.
Well, first things first, I'm going to get us matching T-shirts that say "We'll always have Batu," and we can wear them next time we go to Black Spire Outpost together. But you're right, and what we're talking about, this idea that it's the best time to be a Star Wars fan, that's sort of the result of everything that has come before. But what happens next, right? What does the future hold? I think, this excitement is not just, wow, look at sort of where we are, look at what we have. I like looking forward and looking to see what's next. And I'm just going to quickly sort of gloss over what's coming, because and guys, correct me, because obviously this is there's 3 more movies scheduled between 2022 and 2026, correct? Right? Those are the ones that were supposed to be the Game of Thrones guys, but those are, it's not going to be them. Right. Does Rian Johnson, does he have his own trilogy come up, or is this going to be the same trilogy?
No one knows.
Okay.
No one has come on and said, no, Rian Johnson still has some Star Wars stuff that he's working on. He said that he's excited about it. I know that Lucasfilm loves Rian Johnson, loves working with him. I know what kind of guy he is. So, but we don't know, like, is he going to take one of them and someone else is going to do another one? Are they going to do like just 3 stories in a row? Are they going to jump around like they did with the Star Wars spin-off series movies? No one knows. No one has said. I will say that it seems to have kind of gotten under the radar, but on the blue carpet, when Kathleen Kennedy was interviewed before, they said to her, they asked her about this being the last film in the Skywalker saga. And she did say, I watched her say it with my own eyes, look, we've kind of softened our stance a little bit on that. This is the last story of the Skywalker saga for now. So
and there's a moment near the end
surprise.
There's a moment near the end of Skywalker that you wonder, is it a red herring, or is it deliberately setting up like, oh, let's go tell this story? Is that going to happen? Is there going to be the Obi-Wan spin-off on Disney Plus? Is going to be a Rogue One prequel? The thing out of all this that excites me most, right? We're talking about how now is the time, now is the best time. I say there's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, and it's because of 2 words, and it's Kevin Feige, right? Kevin Feige has been brought on to really help, literally and figuratively, direct the future of Star Wars, right? And, we know about what Kevin has done for Marvel. And if you think Kevin's a Marvel fan, talk to him about Star Wars. You wonder what his vision for the future is, what his role is going to be for the future. What is going to be his role potentially working within Lucasfilm, in addition to, or maybe instead of, working with Marvel. But when you hear that the gauntlet is going, not the Infinity one, but the Star Wars one is sort of being handed over to Kevin Feige, my heart gets all aflutter because of what he's done for Marvel Studios.
Right. Well, the fact that, he's such a powerhouse. I was very excited that at D23, I got to be there when you and Becky got to speak with him. And I know you talked to him before, but this is the kind of guy that is very unassuming, but a great storyteller. He's able to mastermind and maximize potential of characters. Iron Man, what people seem to forget is that before, Jon Favreau came along and Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man was like very much a C-list character. It really wasn't much, but he became a household phenomenon because of the vision of these 3 men that I just talked about. And Feige, they said that Feige's going to do at least 1 Star Wars film. He's got even less free time than the 3 of us. So I don't know how that's going to happen. I don't know if he's going to ride in on a white bantha and save the day or not, but it sure is great knowing that he is going to be a part of this. And I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled about that. Anytime you can get somebody who's a talented storyteller or good at what they do in the world of cinema and movie making, then you've got something great. And because Star Wars is such a beautiful sandbox to work in, and with all these incredible characters, although I wish they'd stop creating new planets. It's almost impossible to keep cracking all the planets now.
How many sand planets do we need?
Yeah, no kidding. And plus it's coarse and it gets everywhere too. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's great. I think it's exciting. I like, one of my favorite things about anything is not knowing, just that anticipation, that thrill of knowing there's more Star Wars coming. I'm glad we have a 3-year window between films. I'm thrilled about that because it lets it breathe. And the exciting thing about Star Wars is that when the original trilogy came out and the prequel trilogy, we had to wait 3 years between these movies, and it just builds that excitement and that hype, and you just keep it going. You get to be a kid all over again. And I think that's masterful.
I think bringing Kevin Feige in is smart because I think we know what Star Wars was, and that for now has ended. We have to figure out what Star Wars will be. And what we know works is the theme parks work. Galaxy's Edge, Rise of Resistance. I think the possibilities are endless. I mean, we haven't even got to the Galactic Starcruiser. That is going to be a literal cruise. Instead of a Disney cruise, you're taking a Star Wars cruise. There are things that we know work. Mandalorian proves that live action streaming shows work. Obi-Wan Kenobi with Ewan McGregor back is going to work. I think Cassian Andor Rogue One series with Diego Luna and Alan Tudyk is going to work. Those things work. The question is, what does Star Wars look like on the big screen without the blaring John Williams music, the crawl? What does it look like? And there's been mixed results for a lot of people with Rogue One and Solo. So I think the question for Kathleen Kennedy, president of Lucasfilm, Alan Horn, Bob Iger, all of the people that are making these decisions, what is Star Wars going to look like on the big screen without the episode and the crawl and the things that we know? And who better to bring on than someone like Kevin Feige? Because those same questions had to have been had even before Disney bought Marvel. What does a Marvel Cinematic Universe look like? And the two men who helped usher that in are Kevin Feige and Jon Favreau. They now have Star Wars shirts on because they're now helping make future Star Wars. So we don't know what Star Wars is going to be. You know, creators have come in and out because I think that question of what is Star Wars on the big screen without the episodes is a question that I don't know if anybody has the answer to. But if you put Kathleen Kennedy, Jon Favreau, Kevin Feige, and even J.J. Abrams in a room together, then whatever's coming out of that room, I'll buy 10. So that is a question for the franchise and for Disney. But in the meantime, like Dan said, we've got 3 years. You know, I'm about to get up tomorrow. I feel like I should and get up at 4 a.m. to go ride Rise of the Resistance. And I cannot. I just try to Ronto wrap the breakfast one's even better than the regular one. So look, I don't know what Star Wars is on the big screen in 2022, 2024, 2026. I know Kevin Feige, I know Jon Favreau, both have their hands in the cookie jar now. And I think that's the best move they could have made because you have somebody who says, well, look, it's hard to make 20 movies that very, very, very few people have problems with. So let's see what he can do over here. And I think that's a genius move on everyone's part to bring people like Jon Favreau and Kevin Feige in, as the franchise for the first time has to look and say, what happens when we don't have an episode movie coming out? And that I cannot think of anybody better than Kevin Feige.
It's scary. I'm glad I'm not in charge.
I think it's a much tougher task. Look, when you're starting something new like the MCU, there's no expectation, right? We don't know this. We're starting something from ground zero. When you take something that is so ingrained in generations and it's just a part of our lives, and now you have to do something new, it's you're right. It's a very scary, almost unenviable position because no matter what you do, there's going to be a large vocal group that is not going to like it, and you're going to start seeing not my Star Wars because it's not, and it's got to be something very new. And I think the timing of what comes next is going to be interesting because I think you sort of have to let this sort of this book, and not just a chapter, but the book on these stories and the way they're being told close, and then start something new. And I'm sure it's an exciting and both scary time for Feige and Favreau, but you're right. When you start putting those names, you put Feige, Favreau, and Abrams together, and that's a pretty amazing trilogy right there. But you mentioned too the Galactic Starcruiser, and you talked about Walt and sort of living your adventure. I'm incredibly excited. This is such a brilliant idea. This idea of taking sort of the cruise mentality and putting it into a hotel at land where you go on these 2-night, 3-day itineraries. Everybody arrives and departs at the same time aboard this Halcyon Starcruiser. But, Batuu is sort of this idea of creating your own Star Wars story. I mean, this really is the idea for you to be the hero of your own Star Wars adventure in a type of immersive experience that we haven't seen elsewhere. I think this is such a remarkably smart idea, because you are not just walking through, riding through, watching a story that's being told, but you are creating a personal adventure with the activities you participate in, the characters you interact with, the other passengers that you meet, in the different locations, right? There's the Galactic Starcruiser terminal. You enter this launch pod. You get, there's going to be lightsaber experiences, which, sign me up right now. Yeah. You can visit the bridge. I mean, and I don't want to spoil a lot, but when this was announced, I just sort of shook my head in awe of how smart this is. And we don't know what the price points are going to be. We can speculate all we want, but it's probably not going to matter, because this is the thing. This is the kind of experience that Star Wars fans have been looking forward to. And as I drive by where it's being built, the idea of walking through that portal and not seeing the outside world again, because your rooms don't have windows, they have screens, and everything is deliberate and intentional and immersive in sort of, this goes back to an early idea that they had for the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, that you'd be picked up at the airport in this old woody station wagon with these velvet curtains, and as soon as you got in, that's when your adventure started. That's what's going to happen here when you get into the porte cochere. You've got this incredible Star Wars. I mean, just imagine getting in there, not just being able to go and get a Ronto wrap and build a lightsaber, but you're wearing your Jedi robes, and everybody in there is completely in character. Again, of all the things that are coming up, this is the thing that I think is so different, so unique, and so exciting.
Another example of how Star Wars continues to reinvent itself and use the nostalgia factor, but bring in new things to incorporate so that we can make this an experience. When you first see Star Wars, you mentioned with your dad seeing the Star Destroyer. That's an experience. That's not watching something on a movie screen. That's an experience. And I think besides the announcement of Galaxy's Edge, which I legitimately wept when I remember when that was announced at D23 years ago, I legitimately wept at that, because I thought, oh my gosh, because it's the theme parks and it's Star Wars. Oh my gosh.
And nobody saw it coming. Nobody knew. No, there was
exactly.
No rumors of that happening.
No, it was just something that was something you dare to dream about, but you never actually saw it come to fruition. And then it does. Then you find out you're going to get to experience it. You're completely immersed in it. And then it's it's supposed to happen. And this takes Celebration to a whole other level, because even in Celebration, you still got the outside world and other things going on. This does encapsulate what Walt wanted. He wanted you, that's why he bought all that land in Florida, because he wanted you, when you're inside the park, he wanted you to forget about the outside world. When you're in the Halcyon, you're going to forget about the outside world, and you're going to be, you're having to actually use a lightsaber legitimately, wearing your Jedi robes where it's actually socially acceptable for those 3 days. It's just, I can't even believe that we're talking about it. But yeah, there's that the little boy inside of me is just like, well, of course this is going to happen. You love this stuff. You've been patient. Good things happen when you believe in the impossible. And what more would Walt Disney say than that? I mean, that's one of his powerful aphorisms. It's kind of fun to do the impossible, and what Disney and the Imagineers are doing with the Halcyon and the Galactic Starcruiser. I mean, and I've heard people say, I don't know what the price is going to be, but it's going to be too expensive for me. Well, save your money. Get one less Starbucks cup of coffee a week and just start putting that money aside, because this is going to be worth it like maybe nothing ever has before. And I like that it's going to be small and intimate enough you can really experience it with your loved ones and meet new people, meet new friends. Imagine how many people you're going to meet on the Halcyon that you never would have met otherwise, who love Star Wars, and you get to live that adventure and it's just going to change you. I can't even believe that we're talking about it. It's absolutely magical.
And I just want to quickly touch on something, because I'm obviously very cognizant of the fact that there is going to be a very high price point, right? Just like a Disney cruise, not everybody feasibly can do it, especially if you have a family and your teachers, and maybe you can't go certain times a year. And I get it. But what I think the beauty of what's happening now is that, and looking into the future, is your fandom can be explored and enjoyed and expanded on in whatever way, financially or otherwise, that is appropriate for you. So if $6, $7 a month is the extent of what you can invest, then it is giving up that so that you can watch all of the Star Wars movies and Clone Wars and Rebels and Mandalorian on Disney Plus, and you can go online and talk about it with other friends. You can download a couple of podcasts for free, by the way, Coffee with Kenobi and Forcecast, and just get, you guys have back catalogs as well as all the stuff that's coming in the future of conversations with like-minded people. You mentioned Star Wars Celebration coming to Anaheim this summer. If you thought last year's was big, imagine what the energy and the vibe of that is going to be. And if you've never been to a fan convention before, maybe that's the first one that you go out to if you can do it. Again, the spectrum of fandom is something that's very personal to you, and you can enjoy it and explore it however works best for you and your family.
The thing about the future is that the people that we've discussed, George Lucas, Walt Disney, their biggest thing was what's next? What's next? They were never satisfied with the moment. And Jon Favreau's very, very much along that same line. The way he makes The Mandalorian is forward thinking. It's always forward thinking. And as Dan mentioned it about Walt and his original dream for Disney World. And I do think that if Walt was alive and saw Star Wars, I think everyone said, at the time that this seems like a Disney movie. This seems like something Walt Disney would have made. I do believe that he would be the most excited about the things that Star Wars is happening, because for some reason, I decided to brave the New Year's time crowd. And a few days ago, we were at the Polynesian to go to Trader Sam's. And I was looking around thinking about this very thing. And, to the side is a man playing the ukulele, and we're out on the patio and there's fireworks, and, you see the villas and you think, okay, this is supposed to transport you to a Polynesian style area. But at the end of the day, there's still a security gate at the front, and you've got to tap your magic band. And there's just the limits that they had. It's amazing even to this day. I love going to places like the Polynesian and stuff. But with what the Galactic Starcruiser and Rise of the Resistance and Galaxy's Edge is, it's what's next. It's the future of storytelling. People would have proven they would rather sit at home in their pajamas with their own popcorn and soda and watch movies that way. I think people would probably pay $30 to get a brand new theatrical release to watch at home whenever they feel like it. The movie theater experience is something that is going away in a sense. People aren't going out to see as many movies. When you look at even VR, there are limits. You're still in your living room. But what Disney and Star Wars get to do is realize Walt's dream in a universe that we've all wanted to go to since 1977. And the Galactic Starcruiser, I keep asking after Rise of Resistance, what could possibly be next? And this is the answer to that. This is what's next, where you're going to park, get in a ship, fly away, and not come back to Earth for multiple days. And to me, as a Disney fan, as a Disney history nut, as a Star Wars history nut, as a Star Wars fan, just the fact that the future of Star Wars is the future of storytelling. That's a new way to tell a story. You're telling a story. You're not just experiencing. You're not just sleeping at a hotel. When you look out the window of the Polynesian, there's still a ferry boat, depending on where you're staying, going across, and there's a big honk, coming through. People, there are still thousands of guests going. When you go to the Galactic Starcruiser, you look out your window, you're going to see like spaceships. It's going to seem so real. When you're on that Star Destroyer hangar at Rise of the Resistance and you see the background and the space back there, it looks like space. And all of the holes in what Walt envisioned, in which you still see cars and traffic and people and all these other things, and lines and cast members getting people out of the way for parades. There's all these things that still have to happen. But what Galaxy's Edge and the Starcruiser are going to do is really transport you to another world. And that, to me, is the most exciting thing, is that the future of not only Disney, but storytelling is happening in the Star Wars universe. And they've done it in such a way that people like my wife, who I honestly don't think we could scrounge up enough money together between the three of us to get her to watch a Star Wars movie right now, but would gladly go to Galaxy's Edge tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow, but in February. Gladly go to Galaxy's Edge in February. And that is the beauty of it, is that somehow they found a way to make the future of storytelling, the future of Imagineering, and the future of Star Wars all line up in this perfect marriage that I don't think anyone could have predicted what we have.
I mean, it's overstating the obvious to say that in 1977, Star Wars was groundbreaking on so many levels. I think new ground is being broken now for and by and with Star Wars and Disney because of all the things that we just talked about. Look, again, coming full circle for me personally, the things that have happened, and I'm so grateful. Like, it sounds stupid, but I am. Like, I'm grateful and I'm thankful because Resistance and Skywalker and Mandalorian and Batuu and, okay, the Ronto Roasters, like, they've brought me back in. They've brought me back into that feeling that I had when I was a kid. Like, all of a sudden now, sitting there watching The Mandalorian, I'm like, yeah, let's turn on Rebels. Let's turn on Clone Wars, something that I wouldn't have said before. I want to go back and experience Rise of Resistance. I want to go hang out in Batuu. I want to go with my son and I want to watch him build a droid and see him get excited about just looking around at the details in Doc Ondar's. And, you know, when I came out of the film, I recorded both on audio and video my immediate reaction because I wanted it to be completely unedited and absolutely authentic. And it's been interesting to watch people's responses and then the reaction to those responses online. You know, the internet, for as wonderful and wondrous as it is and has brought us together literally and figuratively, you know, can sometimes be an ugly, nasty place. And I will tell you that I am, and I think you should be, unapologetic for however it is that you feel about Star Wars or Disney or any fandom. If you love it, then nobody else's opinions matter. You don't let Facebook or stupid Twitter or your friends or critics or even podcasters tell you that what you feel is wrong or stupid or fanboy with OI at the end, pandering or shilling or immature or rose-colored or anything else. Like, this is all about just having fun and the way that it makes you feel. I love how I feel again about Star Wars. Like, I literally, like, if you guys look up, like, I have my original 1977 Star Wars blaster. Like, I literally took it down and I wiped the dust off of it. Like, I know it sounds so stupid. And if you feel good after watching or playing or experiencing or visiting, like, let nobody tarnish that or take that feeling away from you. And I see that happening too often. And you know what? I'm thrilled about the way I feel about it. I'm ecstatic about the way my son feels, that we can do this together, and my wife and my daughter as a family. I love seeing you guys who are the most hardcore of hardcore fans, and it's not only what you love, but it is what you do. Be able to look at it and, yes, with a critical eye, still say you had fun and it touched you emotionally. Like, it does. It brings me joy seeing other people enjoy it. And I don't think anybody should let anybody else take that away from you if it's something that you like.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, embrace what you love, be who you are. And gosh, you know, it makes people happy. It makes people talk. It makes opportunities. Like I said at the beginning of the show, people are taking pictures by the poster in the movie theater. Like, people aren't even necessarily Star Wars fans, but they know and recognize this is a really cool experience. For some people, that's Star Wars. For some people, it's Frozen. For some people, it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't think for too many people, it's a DC movie universe, except for Wonder Woman. And that's all great. Like, just like you said, Lou, like what you like, enjoy it, embrace it. Don't be ashamed of it. Not everyone's going to share your passions. That's okay too. There's a lot of slices of pie out there for us to enjoy. There's a lot for us to take in and experience. And to me, I'm biased, but Star Wars does it better than anybody. Even if I don't like everything Star Wars, but I like that I can have these conversations and make these new friends, because Star Wars is, to me, is about collecting memories more than it is about memorabilia, although I certainly have plenty of that. It's about those memories and moments that we have and that we share, and then we look forward to sharing tomorrow and in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, when Ryan will just be 20 in 50 years, I think.
Hey, it's going to pay off in the long run, fellas.
Yes, it will.
Here's my take on that, Lou, and Dan, you guys both nailed it. The way the internet has gotten is it's so big, and we're all gathered, especially on Twitter. We're all gathered there, but not really for a purpose. Everyone's just kind of there. And so people are just kind of saying stuff, and it can make you feel really bad about the things that you like or the way that you feel. And I kind of likened it to being in the difference between swimming in a friend's or family's pool and swimming in a community pool. If you give me two choices, you're not going to catch me at a community pool. But if you're going to give me a chance to swim in a friend's pool, and that's sort of how I've started to approach the internet, things like Lou's Facebook group and the communities like Dan has built for With Coffee with Kenobi and this show, is that if you love Star Wars, hopefully we're creating a place that you can come, whether you hate episode 7, 8, and 9 and you love The Mandalorian, or if you love 1, 2, and 3, or if you love it all like I do. I love it all. The fact of the matter is the internet's getting so big. The best thing you can do as a Star Wars fan, as a Disney fan, is don't feel bad for your choices, but find your friends and family's pools and maybe get out of the community pool. And that way you can find ways to discuss and have so much fun. I had to catch myself because as somebody who Star Wars has been so special, and there have been times when it's not really been cool to be a Star Wars fan. Even, before Disney bought it 10 years ago, it was sort of like, oh, you're still into that thing? I thought it was over. Who cares? You're a nerd, all this other kind of stuff. But, I have to, as I listen to everyone now talk about The Mandalorian, and I hear them and they're clearly uneducated. I think I literally heard in my third showing, somebody coming in and be like, I think this is where Baby Yoda is. And people are just there to be so excited about Star Wars. I have to catch myself and say, this is amazing. This is fantastic. And that's the most important thing, is that we should all celebrate the fact that this stuff is bringing us together. And Lou, the best part of the Rise of Resistance media event wasn't the fact that I wrote it 7 straight times. It was that I got to watch your son, Nicholas, grab you by the arm and be like, that was so awesome, over and over. Even after the 5th time, he was still saying, did you see that? Did you see that? And, even that's just, it's multiple different ages that were on that cart together as we rode over and over again. And again, that's what I keep coming back to, is that you should be excited about this stuff, even if somebody comes up to you and say, I've never watched anything Star Wars, but this Baby Yoda thing's got me all hyped. I want to watch it. I'm telling everybody, don't worry about what you've seen or not seen before. Just watch it, and we'll get to the rest later. Because guess what? If you really love it, get on a plane, come to Orlando. You can go live it and get a Ronto wrapper too. That's I just keep coming back to. I've never felt better about Star Wars for that very reason, because it's just great.
Well, the worst thing about the Star Wars Rise of Resistance media event is that I was invited, but I couldn't go and hang out with you two yahoos. But seeing you guys experience it and catching your show on Facebook Live, and then hearing the WDW Radio recording of you two and Becky, someone or other, I can't remember her last name. That was cool, because again, you get to experience it and live vicariously through your friends if you're not able to be there at those certain moments. If I could give everybody listening one piece of advice, it would be this. And this is what I tell my students. This is what I tell my kids. This is what my wife and I talk about. I don't need your permission to like or not like Star Wars. I just like it. Like, whether you like it or don't, I'm still going to like it the same. Your opinion of it isn't going to shift mine anywhere or the other. I mean, I still like it. I want you to like it. I want you to not like it. That's totally fine with me. Like, that's okay. Like, I think it's okay to have your passions and your hobbies. And if other people don't share it, it doesn't devalue what you have or what you like or what you believe in. It's just a different perspective. And what a wonderful opportunity to have a conversation and see things from someone else's point of view. I mean, that's really one of the most important things that I think I can pass on.
I very well said, and I agree 100%. And look, and that's the beauty of what we're able to do, right? Is we share our passion, we share our fandom, and I think we become magnets for the type of people in the community that we want to attract, right? There's maybe the WDW Radio show and Coffee with Kenobi and Forcecast isn't for everybody, and that's okay. we want to do it for the people that think and are sort of in alignment with the way that we feel, and talk about the things that simply make us happy about going to Disney World, going on a cruise, or going to see Star Wars. And I'm so grateful that Star Wars has brought us together and that we've become friends and been able to share this, not just tonight, but at the events as well. And I hope to see you both in Batuu and on the Halcyon and at Star Wars Celebration later on this year. In the meantime, Dan and Ryan, please tell people where they can find you and take in all of not just the Star Wars goodness, but the conversation and community as well.
Well, thank you, Lou, so much. Again, it's always a pleasure to be on WDW Radio. Getting that invite from you is always a thrill for me. And you can find me every week on Coffee with Kenobi, anywhere you can find podcasts. We've been doing the show for 6.5 years. We want to make you think. We want to make you laugh. We don't do spoilers. We don't do speculation. We want to deal with what is. And what is right now is 42 years of mythology through comic books, through movies, through animated stuff, through novels, through conventions, through celebrations, through experiences with your family and friends. That's what we want to bring to the conversation. And you're very much a part of that. We like to share your feedback, have you on the show. It's just a great time to be a Star Wars fan, as we've all been saying. You never know when Ryan or Lou is going to show up, or some of your other favorite Star Wars podcasters or personalities. We also have a Patreon page with an exclusive podcast. I just launched danzmedia.com, so feel free to check that out as well. And I also write for StarWars.com and IGN to break down Star Wars and other popular culture topics.
I just like Ronto raps. No. Best place to go. We're on all the podcatchers, but best place to go is forcecast.net. We've got a weekly show that you can catch where we're talking about the last episode we had an interview with a cast member from the movie, and we had played your voicemails and discussed that. We're just very much a feedback show. We always say that Daniel, my co-host, and I, the voices that listen have to be as important as the voices that talk every week. So that's sort of the environment we like to do. We have a separate show on the same feed called Forcecast Plus. We're breaking down every Mandalorian episode 1 through 8. So those are all up now. So as you watch, feel free to check out Forcecast Plus, the Mandalorian recaps. And I think this is usually the part you start fading out, and I'm pretty sure you will, because I talked to Becky today. She told me to tell her she's great, and she never gets enough love on the show. And go eat a Ronto wrap. Thanks for having me, Lou. Becky's great. I'm pretty sure none of this is making the podcast.
No, not at all. Not at all. But thank you guys so very much for sharing your fandom with me and with us. All right, well, I'll tell you what, give me your favorite, over 4+ decades, give me your favorite Star Wars quote. And Ryan, if it's Misa going home, this will be the last time you come on the show.
Wow. Favorite one. Why don't you go first, Lou?
No, listen, I asked you guys because I need time to think about it.
Do or do not. There is no try.
I could give you my top 3. Your focus determines your reality, from Qui-Gon Jinn. Feel, don't think, use your instincts. And then every single word of dialogue between Luke and Yoda in The Last Jedi.
Either P-Yusa from Jar Jar or Yippee from Young Anakin. No.
I felt that in my heart when you said Yippee.
That was indigestion, I think.
It's actually from, and it's probably recency bias, but it's actually from The Rise of Skywalker. It's from Lando Calrissian. He says a few simple words, and it's, "But there are more of us, Poe. There are more of us."
I dig him. I don't know what mine is. It's probably going to be Obi-Wan Kenobi is my favorite character. It might be one from him. I'd have to think about it. But maybe that's a question for you, the listener. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the rise of Skywalker, the Resistance, the Mandalorian, what was, what is, and what is coming in Star Wars fandom. The best place to do that is go to the Box People group on Facebook. It's www.radio.com/community. I'll also ask you there to share your favorite Star Wars quote. And if it's made a Schwartz be with you, that's perfectly acceptable too, because for me, Spaceballs is Star Wars canon.
There it is.
It's time for our Walt Disney World Trivia Question of the Week, where I invite you to test your knowledge of Walt Disney World's history or see how well you pay attention to the details in what you see, hear, maybe smell or taste. And if you think you know the answer, you can enter via our online form for a chance to win a Disney Prize package. Of course, before we get to this week's question, we're going to go back, review last week's, and select our winner. So last week I brought you over to the beautiful new Riviera Resort, and of course, my question had to be somewhat food related because it was to tell me what is the name of the soon-to-be, I think, very, very popular rooftop restaurant at Disney's Riviera Resort. Again, thanks to the hundreds of you who entered, got this one correct, and knew that it's called Topolino's Terrace. And kudos to those who actually gave me the full name, which is Topolino's Terrace, Flavors of the Riviera, because it's inspired by the cliffside restaurants of the French and Italian Riviera. And it really is not just a culinary experience, but it's a multi-sensory experience with incredible views. Dare I say, some of the best restaurant reviews and views that you'll find overlooking the lagoon, the Skyliner, and the nearby Caribbean Beach Resort. At night, you'll be able to see the nighttime spectaculars at Epcot or Disney's Hollywood Studios, or you can even go there for a prefixed Disney character breakfast. Stay tuned, a live dining review, I promise, is coming soon. Anyway, I took all the correct entries, randomly selected one. Again, last week you were playing for all of my digital products, which is my 102 Ways to Save Money for an at Walt Disney World book, and all 7 of my virtual audio walking tours of the Magic Kingdom's secret history, stories, and details broken out land by land. You can find both of those at WDWRadio.com, on Amazon, and in the iTunes Store. I'm also going to send you a WDW Radio vinyl sticker and a Magic Band cover. And last week's winner, randomly selected, is Taylor O'Neill. So Taylor, congratulations. You used the online form. I will get your prize package out to you right away. If you played last week and didn't win, that's okay, because here's your next chance to enter in this week's Walt Disney World Trivia Challenge. So Walt Disney World Marathon Weekend is rapidly approaching, as in this coming week, and it's really become more of an endurance and a running event. It's a fan event, it's a community event, it's a social gathering, and for me it's a good excuse to carb load. Even though I don't really run, I'm just there to cheer throughout the weekend. Anyway, Marathon Weekend has grown not just in number of races, but certainly number of runners and the number of additional opportunities that are available for runners, for spectators, and guests alike. But your question this week is simply to tell me, what was the year of the very first Walt Disney World Marathon race? Now, Google is your friend, but I'm even going to give you a little extra hint and let you know that the year that the race debuted, it actually included a run through all 3 of the theme parks in Walt Disney World. Not 4, but 3. So there you go. So you have until Sunday, January 12th, which actually happens to be Walt Disney World Marathon weekend at 11:59 p.m. to go to WDWRadio.com, click on this week's podcast, use the form there. Again, you're going to play for the book, the audio tours, the vinyl sticker, the Magic Band cover, and the warm and fuzzies, and just good feeling knowing that you're a winner. So good luck and have fun. That's going to do it for this week's show. Thank you so very much for taking the time to tune in this and every week. Please be part of the community and conversation, not just about this episode, but all things the Disney parks, cruise line, Marvel, Star Wars, and more. Please come be part of the WDW Radio family by joining our community on Facebook at wdwradio.com/community. I also want to say huge thanks to everybody who is part of the Nation family and really has done so much to help support the show. I'm not only incredibly grateful to you and for you, but I also love being able to give back to you each month with scavenger hunts, group calls, and so much more. I want to thank some of the new members who joined, the hundreds of you who are part of the Nation family, including Denise Watson, Kent Wilson, Peggy Teal, Rachel Novak, Kimberly Hazard, Avi Erdfarb, Nikki Slater, and Caroline Berry. Thank you so very much. And if you want to find out how you can help not only support the show, but get some of those exclusive rewards every month, including scavenger hunts of the parks and cruise lines, we have a private Facebook group, custom Magic Band covers, logo gear, t-shirts, backpacks, monthly care packages from Walt Disney World, and more. including access to our live video monthly group calls, please visit wdwradio.com/support. And don't forget that a portion of your obviously optional contribution does go to our Dream Team project to benefit the Make-A-Wish Foundation of America. Speaking of community and connecting, you can also connect with me on other social, including @LouMongello on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you have a question you want me to answer on the show, you can email me directly, lou@wdwradio.com, or call the voicemail, be heard on the air with a hello from the parks, a question, a comment about this or any shows, or something maybe you'd like to hear on a future episode. You can call the voicemail at 407-900-9391. That's 407-900-WW1. And again, as much as I love connecting with you online and communicating with you there and in the Box People group on Facebook, nothing beats a handshake and a hug. It's why I continue now. I think it's almost 12 years consistently that we've been doing monthly meetups in Walt Disney World. We're literally going back to where it all began. The very first meet of the month was over Walt Disney World Marathon Weekend about 12 years ago. We're doing it again this coming weekend, January 11th, Marathon Weekend. That's a Saturday from 2 to 3:30 p.m. at the Tomorrowland Terrace/Noodle Station in Magic Kingdom. To find out more, RSVP. Again, it's open to everyone. You don't have to be part of the running team, part of the community. You can come alone, bring the entire family. It's fun, it's free, it's 100% kid-friendly. Again, to find out more and RSVP, just let me know that you're coming. Visit wdwradio.com/events. There you'll also find out not only about upcoming meets of the month, but upcoming cruises, Adventures by Disney, on-the-road events, and a few other things that I have planned as well. Speaking of on the road, I will be announcing some on-the-road meetups as I travel to speak. I'll be in San Diego in about a month and a half. I'll be overseas in Europe. Maybe we'll do a little meetup in Italy, if anybody is out there as well. And if you go to LouMongello.com, you can find out how I could maybe to come speak to your business, your conference, your event, or to your school, or work with you to help you turn what you love into what you do. Stay tuned. Over the next week or so, I'm going to be announcing dates, super early bird pricing for my Momentum Weekend Retreat in Walt Disney World, as well as my Momentum Weekend Workshop coming up this fall. But in the meantime, if you want to find out how I can help you by working with you directly, or upcoming events or other things that I have planned that I'm about to announce probably within the next 3 or so weeks, please go and visit LouMongello.com. Thanks as always to Becky Mankin and the entire team over at MouseFanTravel.com. Whether you are coming to World, Land, Cruise, Adventures by Disney, or even a non-Disney vacation anywhere on the planet, she and her team can help you get the best possible prices, all available discounts, and it all comes at no cost to you. It's why they are my recommended travel provider, because it's who I use, and more importantly, it's who I trust for you to use as well. The incredible level of personal service that she and her team will give you is the reason why I've been using and, more importantly, recommending them for, I think it's like 12 years now. Again, you can go and find them for a free, no obligation quote over at MouseFanTravel.com. And as always, my friend, and you are my friend, and I mean that sincerely, whether we have met yet or not, all I ask is that if you like the show, please take just 30 seconds to help spread the word. Let others know about it. Tweet out that you're listening. Share a link to this or your favorite episode on Facebook. It is incredibly, incredibly helpful. And if you can, go over to iTunes and leave a review. Thanks to you, we have more than 2,000 5-star reviews. Every single one is important. I read them all, and they are incredibly, incredibly helpful. I want to thank some recent reviewers like Alice in Disney Mom, who said, for those who've asked where I found my Disney group or you belong to a clubhouse, it's Lou's podcast that started for me a year ago. He began WDW Radio back in 2005. I've listened to 8 out of more than 13 years of episodes. I just began back in 2012, which sounds so far away. The food reviews, interviews, DSI, the top, not so much, 10. Did I mention food reviews? Lou isn't a voice reading from a cue card. He's including each and everyone that listens to an episode just like you're there with him. I thought I knew so much about Disney, but realized very quickly it was only from movies, songs, and the one book I have on Walt. But today I can speak Disney. I've been introduced to many people I never thought would be friends, including one that lives only 20 minutes from me. I'm able to spread my love of Disney to my own children, nieces, and nephews, and give them the inspiration to soar to their dreams. If you have an ounce of like for Disney, take a listen to an episode, and who knows, you may just wake up your sleeping inner Disnerd. Nurse JJ says it's professionally done, upbeat voice, and a clear, concise topic for every episode. It's so rare to have a clear and concise topic for podcasters to stay on point, although I do get a little tangential sometimes. Anyway, so many of the other Disney podcasts are slow. I don't want to read negative stuff about other podcasts. But anyway, love this podcast and the theme. Don't change. Nurse JJ, thank you very much. I understand the intent of what you're saying. K Kane 32 says it's a great source of Disney info. You can obviously see I don't read these ahead of time. I just sort of go through them live. The podcast is a fantastic way to pass the time until your next Disney trip, giving you plenty of information and history behind the parks. I was never a big podcast guy, but when I found Lou's show back in January, I instantly got hooked. He enjoys food just as much as I do, and I'd be lying if I didn't say I didn't use some of his recommendations for my next trip in September. Keep up the great work. And Chris Anderson 75 says, it's a Disney lover's dream podcast. WDW Radio has changed my life? Yikes. Lou's love and passion for all things Disney, that's incredibly humbling, makes every episode fun to listen to. Lou helps me sit back, relax, and enjoy my day at work when I listen to him and his friends and family talk about the new things coming to the parks and the oh-so-mouth-watering food reviews. Lou makes everyone feel welcome and makes everyone feel like a friend, whether we've met yet or not. Thank you so much for all that you've done and continue to do, Lou. Your hard work and dedication is greatly appreciated by this Disney enthusiast. Chris, K. Kane, Nurse JJ, and Alice in Disney Mom, thank you, and everybody else who has left a review so very much. Again, just search for WDW Radio on iTunes or go to wdwradio.com/iTunes for details, instructions, and a link on exactly how and where to leave a review. And finally, most importantly, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love and appreciate you as we start this new year, and I'm always looking and moving forward, just like Walt told us to do, right? Is to keep moving forward. I did pause and I looked back on the past year and the past years and all of the incredible things that have happened because of you, because of the gift of your time and your attention and your love and support. You fuel my fire. You empower and enable me to do this and share it with you. And the love that you give me in return means so very much. You have impacted my life and the lives of others in such an incredibly positive way. I want you to know how appreciative I am for it. And I promise you, I will continue to move forward. I will always continue to try and improve and serve you and give back to you and bring joy to you in any way that I can. If there's some way that I can help you, if I can do more, if you have an idea, something you want me to do or hear or see, or even go taste for you, I'll do it. Just let me know. I hope that 2020 and the years that follow are your best ever. And as a wise man who, like me, is trapped in a younger man's body, all it takes is faith and trust. Stay focused, stay positive, have faith in the course that you are on, and trust in the path that you are carving out for yourself. I hope that this is your best week ever. So until next time, thank you again. I love you so very much. See ya.
Hey Lou, this is Alex Byers calling from Hazelhurst, Georgia. It's been a long time since I've called. I'm a little behind on all my podcasts, but I'm finally catching up. And I just finished listening to the Japan recap, parts 1 and 2, and I've really enjoyed that. I am from a very small town, and so I've always I love getting out and traveling different places. I haven't been anywhere out of the country, but Japan has always been my number one place to visit. I actually have a friend that lives in Japan, not in Tokyo, but I've always wanted to go visit her, and just listening to your recap about your trip really, really makes me want to just go even more. Back in October, I thought I'd share this. I took my mom to Disney World for her very first time, and her birthday is on Halloween. So we did the Halloween party, it was wonderful, but it was very, very crowded. I guess you always learn your first time, so we can't wait to do that again. And I took her to Epcot. We ate around the world. The Food and Wine Festival is still going on, and she absolutely loved that. And we went to Animal Kingdom one day, and she absolutely loved Pandora. So it was really fun just seeing her face, and it was just me and her having mom-daughter time, which is something we've never done, and it was just a really, really awesome experience. And I just want to encourage anybody that if you want to take your parents to Disney and they've never been, absolutely do it. I was honestly nervous because sometimes me and my mom are very different in our likes and dislikes, but we actually had a wonderful time, and I will never forget it. And she actually can't wait to go back and take my two sisters, so it was very, very fun. And also, I'm really hoping to get an annual pass this year. It's one of my big on my to-do list, on my resolution is to try to get an annual pass for this year. And I've almost saved up enough to get one. And my dad and stepmom and two brothers and sisters are also traveling at the end of January to Disney World. So I'm really hoping to get an annual pass by that time so I can go down and visit them. And yeah, I'm just really hoping that this year is going to be awesome. I really have a good feeling that it is. So I hope and pray that everyone that's listening has a wonderful year, and hope you all had a wonderful holiday season and Happy New Year. And I can't wait to see what's, going on with everybody else and WDW Radio. Have a magical day, you guys. Bye-bye.
Hey, Lou. It's Christine Morrison again from Flower Town, PA. I just feeling a little nostalgic this morning. It's 8:30 on New Year's Day, and I realize this is the first official day of my new adventure, my new business, and I'm down to 1 day a week at the vet hospital. And I never thought a year ago this is where I would be, but I just wanted to share that with you all. It's going to be an awesome year, best year ever, and looking forward to bigger and better things. And someday I will make it to Momentum because I could really use all your help to keep my business moving forward. Anyway, Happy New Year. Couldn't have done it without all of you guys. I hope you enjoy your day. It's trying to snow here in Pennsylvania, but hopefully the sun will come out. Take care. Make somebody smile. Brand new year, brand new decade. Woohoo! Bye-bye.
Darlene Yankee, formerly of West Seneca, New York, calling in to say Happy New Year to everybody, and I hope you all have a safe and healthy New Year. We have about 2 weeks until our Walt Disney World Marathon coming up. I will be doing the 5K, so also doing some cheering for the 10, half, and maybe the full too. And then there is, oh my goodness, about a month left until the New Orleans adventure and the meetup. I would love to be there, but not sure if I'm going to make it to the pre-cruise. So everybody please post pictures and have a magical day. And thank you, Lou, for everything that you do. And can't wait until the 2020 podcasts and events that you're going to be posting for all of the WDW Radio Fox family and everyone else that listens. Love you guys. Thank you.
Let's go out with something really hot for these folks. A big hit out of 77. Ah, Star Wars, nothing but Star Wars. Give me the Star Wars, don't let them end. Ah, Star Wars, if they should bar wars, please let these Star Wars stay. And hey, how about that nutty Star Wars bar? Can you forget all the creatures in there? And hey, Darth Vader in that black and evil mask. Did he scare you as much as he scared me? Ah, Star Wars! Those near and far wars! My seventh winner up here! Star Wars!
Star Tours announces the boarding of the Endor Express, non-stop star speeder service to the moon of Endor. All passengers, please prepare for immediate boarding.
The Force will be with you always.